Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of BrillMedia.co and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Curtis Forbes, and Curtis is the founder and CEO of Forbes Music Company. Curtis is a world-class musician dedicated to sharing his appreciation of music with others through his education. And Forbes Music Company is leading the way in private music education. So Curtis, thank you for being with us today. Tell us about how you came to be a music educator.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Glad to be here. Kind of a circuitous route. I originally went to school for engineering, and I realized that I was much more interested in picking up my guitar than I was my textbooks. So I eventually pursued that passion, and I went to school for music. I performed for quite a few years, and through a series of events, some unfortunate, some not, I discovered really a passion for teaching. Long ago, I moved to New York City to really pursue that. And it was life-changing. It was great. I was performing quite a bit, and eventually I started developing some curriculum for public and private schools in a lot of their after-school enrichment programs. And I was working with a lot of kids doing some music education activities. That's the short story on how I got involved with it. The rest is kind of history from there. I felt a little bit more rewarding for me. So some context, my focus was in jazz, and, the audiences are not filling up stadiums. And I was able to really have, I think, a much broader reach, with some incredible audiences. A lot of those audiences were young children that were, inspired by, I think, what we could do for them.
And now you've been doing Forbes Music Company since 2001. Have you been focused on that all this time? I see you've touched a number of different companies during that period. Founder, Liveshed Inc., member of the Recording Academy, Media Tech Ventures. Tell me a little bit about how the music education plays into the larger sort of like the beats of your life and your professional career.
Oh, what a great question. So since 2001, since I finished school and since I started performing, and since I finished school in the 90s, and after I was performing, got involved in education, I started this organization, and like I'd mentioned previously, we had originally just started developing curriculum for after-school enrichment programs. So that eventually grew to private lessons. I started hiring instructors. That's really, I guess, a brief way to describe how the company kind of took off. I think that a lot of the school systems that we were working with around New York City just saw a lot of the value in what we were doing. Parents got wind of everything, and within the community, essentially we hung the sign up, and the phone hadn't stopped ringing since. So as far as those other organizations, it was really through the course of developing this organization that I saw a need or an opportunity really for some unique video technology to help and this was years ago, I think, as well before any of these online lessons had been normalized, pre-COVID and all that. So I had worked with some technologists and developers and organizations like that, and put together some really savvy, clever video technology. That's what Liveshed was, and it was essentially a way to give the video users an ability to I guess, choose their own angles, a multi-camera setup. And so, the uses in music were limitless,
Curtis, what I think is really fascinating about I've met a number of executives in the advertising business, people who know how to do selling very well, people who are practitioners, people who understand the art of diplomacy, and all these different components that go into making an advertising campaign run. And what I often hear is that the things that they learn in the business, doing some technology component of advertising, marketing, building a startup, whatever it is, they often want to take that knowledge and deploy it to the thing that they know and love to do. So my question to you is, with Liveshed, what are some of the lessons that you may have learned from Liveshed that can be used or deployed or activated in music education? Or what are some of those naturally occurring trends?
Well, in developing that business, one of the first things I realized was my specialty is not video. that was actually one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn. And and you're going to learn quickly when you try to develop a business and you're figuring out that product market fit, where there's a major appetite for something like that. And while there was in music, music education does have some limitations in terms of your market. Sports was also I happen to be a sports fan, which is also helpful. But that happened to be even one of the bigger ways that we were able to find some fit there. Some of the lessons that I learned and how we can apply it. I was just talking about this. I was just talking about this recently. I think that one of the biggest I learned when I developed that is to really hone in and identify those problems that you are trying to solve before you develop the solution that you believe is going to work. Because I think that at the end of the day, we can develop these really nice and fancy features and these beautiful products, and if they're not really servicing a need that we've identified, you're going to have a lot of problems convincing, any kind of user behavior, which is one of the most difficult things that you can do in business. And that was
probably. How does that take? How do you learn what it takes to build a process or a service that consumers want?
How long does that take?
How long did it take for you?
Probably the years that I was working on that project. Throughout the course of my time building Forbes Music Company, if you are hyper tuned into your customer, and I mean really hyper, everything that we do here is consumer centric. Everything that we do is client centric, right? From the technology that we've built to the processes that we employ is all with one goal in mind, and that's to make people's lives better, to make it easier, to make it more productive, and to bring, to put smiles on people's faces. And if you're that tuned into your customer, it really actually makes the market research even easier. And we did quite a bit of that. And for some people, it can take years. For some people, it can take months. We did a lot of market research. We polled a lot of, a lot of clients that were working with my organization. I canvassed streets and music stores to test out this technology. So, ultimately, I guess it really depends on how much experience somebody has in their industry with the problem that they're trying to solve, or if they're entirely new to it.
Can you tell us about some of the growth milestones that you've experienced with Forbes Music Company? Like what I'm really thinking of, if I could frame that conversation, is, you start a business, it never goes as fast as you'd like it to, or never in a straight line that you'd like it to.
No.
If you had to break out the success of your business, what are two or three milestones that are critical for you, and as you recall the history of your business?
Some milestones that would be, well, I guess one of the first things that I remember getting to is the point to which the company had grown, where I could not, where I needed some sort of customer relationship management, process, procedure, software, something to hold that all together. I think that when I became a business owner, there was so little I really knew about business. My background was not in business. And so a lot of it for those first 10 years was just learning as I went. So reading books, anything that I could get my hands on to educate myself. And so one of those first things was employing some kind of technology, software, and process for customer relationship management. That was one of the big things.
And what was the tool that you used? So 10 years, so that puts it at about 2011?
2011. Yeah, well, I would say over the first 10 years of learning that I didn't know much about business, we started using, CRM software, probably about, I would say, anywhere from 10 to 11 years ago, which is really kind of at its infancy. I remember when I started looking into a lot of those things, 2005, 6. These programs were not nearly as robust as they are now. They didn't have nearly the scope, of possibilities that you can do with them now. So there were we had a system that I had custom built that was, as I like to say, it was held together by paper clips and chewing gum. We had a custom developed software that we had used to help manage some of our business processes and functionality. We eventually then, I would say probably about 10 years ago, moved to a full-blown CRM system. And even just as recently as this last year, migrated to a new platform that has done some amazing things.
What do you look at for the success of your business? It's 2021. We're barely coming out of, as we're recording this, end of March. We're coming out of one of the biggest changes that our world has seen in the last 100 years. There's a lot of places to go with this, right? Maybe not inception you, but I'll for future, like 5 minutes from now, I want to talk about like how you handled COVID and what that does for your business. I'm really interested fundamentally, like one of the things I learned recently is that different entrepreneurs have different metrics for how they view the success of their business. And those metrics will change over time. Someone who I have a great deal of respect for in the marketing and advertising business, really just, her point of view is like, I want to live my life in a way that's good and easy for me. And that's a good metric. I don't want to have to work a corporate job. That's a metric, right? I'm proud of that. We all have different motivations for why we do what we do. So my question to you really is, what do you look at as success for your business? What are you striving for? And how has that changed over the years?
I set out a really long time ago, Robert, on a crusade to change the narrative of what it means to be a professional in a profession that is not often characterized by professionalism. And anybody who spent time in the music industry knows exactly what I'm talking about. There is so much to love about the creative arts, and there's also so much to really frustrate you about the creative arts and the people involved in the industry. I went into the music industry because I love music, and it makes me smile, and I enjoy being creative. And I feel that even though I might not be playing music every day and making solos or whatever, I'm able to create something else, right? And at the end of the day, I think that I'm in the business of relationships. Musicians and music educators have a stigma. I think that we work with the cream of the crop. And these people are consummate professionals who I admire. And that makes me feel privileged. If I can work in an organization in this industry that is helping people survive and be professionals doing things that they love, that makes me feel really, really good. It's never been about a bottom line in this business that I run, but it's always been about making people's lives better. And I think that when we work with children and we give them the tools to be creative and to build their self-esteem and to get better grades, or when we're working with adults who can rekindle or discover a love for something new that can relieve stress and even improve work performance, that's a really amazing thing. And that's pretty rewarding by itself. If I can work with teachers who play gigs, but otherwise, might not be millionaires, but have this ability to maintain this professional practice, and I provide them all of the tools to make that easy and seamless and turnkey, then we're making their lives better too. And that's really my litmus. If I'm doing that, then we're doing the right thing.
So do you primarily work with, like, do you have an age range of the types of clients or folks that you work with?
Yes, a very specific one, from ages roughly 2.5 to 3 years old, all the way up to 100.
Got it. It's everyone. That's and do you have is it like across the board, like any instrument, every instrument? And are you teaching it? Is someone else teaching it? How does this work?
It is not me. I don't teach anymore. I used to. It's been many years since I have, but I don't, unfortunately. I do miss it. We do work with all different instruments. The majority of teachers that we work with have been with us for years. We don't have a lot of teacher turnover. We're constantly top grading our staff, and obviously life changes, and some teachers do move on sometimes. And so availability with certain instruments, or certain disciplines can vary. And there might be some times where there might be some obscure instruments that we might not necessarily have somebody super skilled on, but that's pretty rare. We have a pretty talented teaching staff that can just about accommodate almost anything.
And how do you find? I mean, do you work with people all over the country?
We do. As a matter of fact, we provide in-home music lessons in several regional, areas across the country. The New York State area that includes New York, Connecticut, the suburban area around the city, and New Jersey, the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, as well as parts of the West Coast, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and as recently as just before COVID as well, Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta were some areas of expansion that we had just moved into. As far as online lessons, we do work with everybody all over the country. We even have some international students as well. So yeah, we do.
That's great. And as the world has become much more focused on virtual communication, Zoom, etc., how has your business adapted? And were you doing, I presume when we talk about national lessons, we're talking about over Zoom or some other, Microsoft Teams or something, right? You're not going, you don't have people all over the country. So when did you make that shift? Was it prior to COVID? Was it during COVID? Let's talk about your COVID, how that affected your business.
How COVID changed everything. Yeah. So COVID turned our 5-year plan basically into our 5-month plan. And the changes, the additions have been pretty much welcomed by everybody in our ecosystem. The most obvious change, I would say, we deliver significantly more online lessons than we ever had before. What had been more or less a program in beta quickly, I think, just became the normalized method for conducting lessons. How could it not? That was our only option. And we learned a lot of lessons in those first few months. And we quickly established a really strong workflow and a process to elevate that experience to the level that we're known for. I had mentioned before, we migrated to an entirely new platform. We did that late summer. And I think we're providing so much more value to all of our clients with features that really kind of enhance their learning process. We completely revamped our website to better communicate our mission and our services. We turned our business model really on its head to make sure that we have scheduling plan options that could appeal to anyone and everyone across the country, lesson packages, subscription plans that we had never really had before. But the online platform gives us far more flexibility and latitude when it comes to logistics that you can't necessarily work with in-home lessons.
Yeah, I love being at home all day. We work from home, and everything we do is remote. I get so much more done. No traffic. Don't have to get to meetings and sit in traffic and have have lunch and then come back, and it's like 2 hours of the day for one conversation. It's certainly valuable to do it in person, but still nonetheless just takes a lot of time. I feel like, one of the things that I think is relevant is that I think prior to COVID, people could certainly work from home and do all kinds of remote, but the other end of the conversation, people aren't primed or as receptive to having those conversations virtually. They would demand an in-person meeting and be like, all right, let's do it. But now the whole world is so primed for these communication styles that I think it's good on both sides. So I guess my question is, you had a 5-year plan. So your 5-year plan, there's a lot to do, right? There's supply and demand. There's how do you get new clients, and how do you staff your existing demand with the right tutors? So how do you keep the supply chain, as it were, the human supply chain, keep that in line and in tune with the demand for your services? Carefully, right?
Yeah. These are some really great questions. I know we only have a limited amount of time to talk about it, or we could be here all night. You're right. Carefully. COVID had changed a lot of things in a lot of people's lives, and a lot of those people were teachers that worked with us and clients that worked with us as well. There had been many teachers that had to move on to other opportunities or decided that they didn't want to be involved in music altogether. Those things happen. And so we practice a lot of outreach. We're active in a lot of music communities all over the country. We promote a lot of vacancies to make sure that we have a continuous pipeline of applicants that we can vet. Our vetting processes are pretty extensive and really, really thorough. One of the nice things about this shift to online, and I anticipate some of these things actually changing in the next couple of months even, so many of the kids, and I would say, a majority of the clients with whom we work are young people. So many kids had school at home. It was all virtual, or they have hybrid schedules where they're at home sometimes, they're in school sometimes. So just the nature of availability made this whole time during COVID, it just eased so much of the logistic burden. So whether we downsized for our existing staff or added teachers, being able to accommodate clients with their requests in terms of scheduling became far easier. And, we were almost able to give people infinite options that they could work with in terms of their days and times, and not have any sort of, concessions when it came to the type of people that they're having to work with. So it's actually been great. Now, I anticipate in the next several months, right, this may be changing a little bit as some of the schools are more back to full time, in person. People who are if everybody's getting vaccinated, and being able to invite people into their homes, teachers are getting vaccinated. I would anticipate that there's going to be some more logistical challenges that present themselves, but we're making sure that we're constantly getting that that pipeline of applications so we can continue to vet people and bring on some incredible folks.
Amazing. And let's talk about the growth of your business, the scale, how you attract new customers. Tell us some of the, I mean, do you have folks in-house that do marketing for you? Do you outsource it to folks? Is it a complete DIY practice that you do? Like, tell us about how a business grows and scales in your industry.
The answer is all the above. Well, not necessarily the DIY, but we do a little bit of everything. We do have some folks in-house who handle a lot of the marketing, who handle a lot of the social media, things like that. We do work with a marketing agency, when it comes to a lot of our digital marketing strategies. So it's a little bit of both. I mean, paid ads. We do a lot of Google search. We do Facebook. We try and stay relevant in just about every channel that you possibly can. We have a really unique of business where the individual who is procuring the service isn't necessarily the individual who's paying for it, right? If the majority of the people with whom you work and clients that you have are youth, right? Their parents are the ones, right? So you're marketing to different types of people. And so, and in addition to teachers as well, we really do consider them our internal customers and we treat them as such. So we're having to market to a lot of different types of individuals to make sure that we can stay top of mind.
How long did it take you to find the right agency? Or did you hit it off? Did you get a good one right off the bat?
I think that we got lucky. Yeah. You know what? Which is rare. I mean, I personally work really well off of referrals. I really, really trust a lot of the contacts that I have in the business world, a lot of the people that I work with in the technology world. I will always go back to the well. If I have a really great experience with somebody, that's the person I'm going to go to the next time that I need something taken care of. And those people that I trust, if I feel like in their world, they might have some connections that can do something, extremely well. And the same goes for teachers as well. Those teachers that we work with who are extremely high performers, those are the people that we go straight to when we need referrals of some people who can deliver at a high level like that. Because what you find is that those people who are exceptional professionals, they're going to want to associate themselves with other people who are exceptional professionals, right? You are a combination of those, people that you surround yourself by every day. So we were fortunate. Because I just kind of tapped into my network.
It's always good to have a referral network.
It really is.
When you run ads and you're on Facebook and you're on Google search, are the ads focused in on getting people to what is the key performance metric, right? Is it like sign up to share your information so that you can reach out to them? Is it buy now? Is it, get a free? How do people? What's the thought process in your business?
No, so that's interesting, and we've done a lot of testing with some of this language. Signing up for music lessons is it's a luxury. We know that and we realize it, and people do it when they're ready to make that emotional purchase. Buy now is not something that has really resonated with people, and for our, for the services that we provide. We know that when we have an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody, to tell them about what we do, and how much we love what we do and what we can bring to the table, that we'll find that we have a much higher rate of success. And so our biggest effort initially is to have a conversation. So when it comes to Facebook ads, when it comes to Google ads and things like that, it is to visit our site and learn a little bit more. If you want to, look to, if you want more information about booking, give us your email, give us a call, and that's always our first touch is to place a phone call. It's part of that personalized process that I think separates us just a little bit. Is the first that we usually make is to make a phone call.
Yeah, it's building that nurture. It's
That's
the
right.
know, like, and trust, right? Like, people need to know who you are. They need to know the services that you offer. They need to ensure that there's a like that that they can trust you.
That's exactly right. And we know that most people might not answer the phone. They might see an odd number that they're unfamiliar with, but I just wanted to leave you a message. I wanted to leave you a message, and I wanted to introduce myself and tell you how we can help. And that's generally what I'll say to people if I'm the one that's leaving the message, and I'll follow that up with a nice email to give them a little bit more information and our phone number. And there have been many times where the relationship is just email after that, but it's still, we still want to make that effort. We want them to be able to put a voice, to the name.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for patience, which I know a lot of marketers don't want to hear. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to identify the right recipe that builds that trust, the unique type of trust that you need. That's right. Any individual company needs to grow their business.
And don't forget, Robert, people are inviting us into their home to work with their children. I mean, that's a really, really, really big deal. And in fact, I know that this is not really in line with the question, but one of the biggest factors that I keep in mind whenever I'm vetting a teacher is this somebody that I want to invite into my home to work with my children? So building that relationship so they can know a little bit about who we are, what motivates us, those words on our about page, we live by every day. So
that's incredible. Yeah. And you're not just selling the brand or the company or the service, you're really selling the value and the trust of your teachers. And I see on your website, you have images of your teachers, some of your teachers, and what they teach, etc. Wow.
Yeah. And I think, depending on the pages that you're on, it'll, every time you get to that page, it'll just refresh with another group of teachers. So it's always a variety that's populating in those pictures there.
And so during COVID, does your business grow during this time because people are more amenable to online communication?
The business has sort of yes and sort of no, which is actually a pretty good question. There were quite a few clients who decided that they wanted to wait it out. It was important to them to be able to take the time that they needed before they invited, teachers back into their home, which is perfectly understandable. Who also felt like that an online learning platform wasn't necessarily for them, and that's perfectly okay too. Understanding the severity, of the problem, we made sure that everybody knows and knew. Anything that you paid for, it's good forever. I understand that this is a complicated time. When you're ready to come back, we will be here for you.
Right.
And so there's quite a few folks who weren't ready to come back, who didn't want the online experience, who maybe were a little unsure of its efficacy, right. Or if maybe they had really young children, and I understand that it can be difficult sometimes with young kids who are 3, 4, 5 years old.
How do you overcome that? How do you overcome the fact that the new world is online?
By making sure you have plenty of people who can create the most dynamic experience imaginable, and I'm being completely honest when I say that. Especially for young kids, it really has modified a little bit how you might go about teaching a lesson. And teachers have learned, I think, some have learned the hard way. But the reality is that you can't do things the same way online as you could do them in person.
Yeah.
So in the delivery of the lesson itself, teachers have to really modify their practice to make sure that it is dynamic and that it is engaging. For a lot of those folks who who decided they needed to take some time off and wait, they're all filing back in, which is really, really exciting. And then in the time since, it has, the demand for online has just grown exponentially, and which is great. So I think that the fact that it's been normalized has been something that's really, really helped the business. Like I had mentioned to you before, this was a program that we were doing sort of before COVID, but it also really wasn't a normalized practice. You see organizations out there like like Varsity Tutors or whatever that provide a service entirely online, which is great, and a lot of people were ready for that. But when it came to music and the creative arts, it didn't really quite get over that hump yet until we were all forced over that hump. And then they found out, wow, this is great. First of all, I can do the lessons whenever I feel like it. Scheduling is easy. I don't have to take my kids anywhere. I don't have to invite somebody into my home. I can do them from any room. The scheduling plans and the policies are far more flexible than they are when they're in home. So life is better. There's really no drop off, and it's proven efficacy. I tell that to just about anybody who asks. And, I think that in that regard, it's been great. So we've been able to get a whole new group of clientele that I think might previously not have been ready.
And so what does the rest of 2021 look like? I mean, you mentioned that we're in the midst of changes back to the physical world, and there's a lot of unsure stuff happening here. What does the next, I guess, year look like for you going into 2022?
Well, first of all, I think that we're really, really excited about, continuing this online surge. Mm-hmm. That's something that we definitely want to keep our thumb on. And I think that that's really important to us to make sure that we dial in so that it keeps getting even better. And I imagine that it will. We're ready to bring on a lot more teachers to satisfy, what I anticipate being a really, really strong need for in-home lessons. I think that as more vaccinations happen, as we get closer to summer, maybe potentially even the fall when schools are back in session, I think a lot of families are going to be ready for that. And so we just need to be prepared that we have some great people that we work with. So it's, you might need to ask me that question at the end of the year so I can answer it a little bit better, but that's probably the best prognostication.
It's like the world right now is so dynamic. There's so many moving parts. There's so much uncertainty. To me, it's par for the course for our business. Every 3 months for the digital advertising and marketing business is basically like, a year or two. We age in dog years in advertising. And so to me, it's the way things always are. It's really fascinating for me to see other industries having to adapt to the immense quickness of the change and just needing flexibility. Everyone needs as much flexibility as we can possibly get in every facet of our life, because who knows what the world looks like 6 months from now. Will there be variants? Will we be going outside? How will people be what does consumer behavior look like? So when people want to reach out, I have your website scrolling at the bottom here. It's forbesmusic.com. Are there any other things that people should know if they want a lesson for themselves or their child?
I mean, we work with the most dynamic and personable and top tier music educators, who deliver exceptional music education experiences to students, both in home and online. We also have a lot of online group classes as well, which are really, really, really cool. They're at a fraction of the cost of private lessons. And that's another really great option for a lot of people who might not be ready to do private stuff, might want to dive into some really interesting topics. So a lot of the difference about what we do really lies both in how we're able to deliver, I think, such a uniquely customized and curated experience for families, and also the support resources and mechanisms that we use to provide such an outstanding value and still remain scalable. So, come visit our website. Yeah, come share with us your info, and hopefully we can build something great.
ForbesMusic.com. Curtis Forbes, founder and CEO of Forbes Music Company. Thanks for being with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much, Robert.